Okay, let's start again. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to join our Youth Professional Career Development, Innovation, and Entrepreneur Experience Sharing Forum. This is the second in the series. Last month, we kicked off this forum. We had a group of very outstanding youth, young leaders, and professionals and the young entrepreneurs who came to this forum and shared their stories. Today, we're going to present you another group of excellent young speakers. So before we start, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Sharon Wan. I'm the Vice President of CCEA, Canada-China Economic Trade and Cultural Exchange Promotion Alliance. And also I teach at the law school, Oscar Hall Law School of York University. I will be the moderator of this evening. And today's forum is organized by CCEA together with a list of other local Toronto Chinese community organizations. And we are very fortunate to have joining us today a group of community leaders. Okay, just getting the list here to share with everyone. Zheng Chen, who is the executive president of CCEA, Bill Ye, chairman of the CCAA, Emily Gu, Tracy Duan, Mia Ma, and Professor Wang Peizhong, Yao Jie Lu, vice president of the North American Chinese Society of Automotive Engineers, and Nelson Liu, Sam Wang, joining us as well as many participants in front of the screen right now. And before we start, I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to that CCE and all these organizations have put our effort into organizing all sorts of community events to help enrich our community. So last year, we hosted the Youth Professional Career Development, Innovation, and Entrepreneur Experience Sharing Forum in 2022 virtually. And this year, earlier in this year, back in May, we hosted the Career Development Forum offline in person with pouring support of the community and from many businesses and the government agencies supporting us. From the pictures, you can see what a big crowd we have drawn, and we have many students and the employers joining us in the career fair. And then now we started having this forum where we wanted to, again, bring to everyone and celebrate the success of these excellent talents who have grown up here in Canada, who may be born here in Canada, who have grown up in Canada, or who moved to Canada at a young age and already achieved a huge success in their short career time. And we're here to celebrate. We're also here to learn from these young people and hope to shed some light to those of you who are in front of the screen to get some ideas, maybe to show you the path to your success. Okay, so just before we start, I want to remind everyone that the opinions expressed by the guest speakers only represent their own opinions, represent themselves, and do not represent the views of the organizers or speakers' companies. Some of the information shared by this forum may not be accurate over time and needed to be re-investigated. The viewpoints of the speakers can be referenced, may not be used as guideline for decision-making. The keynote or guest speakers and the speakers' companies do not assume any responsibilities arising therefrom. Please quote based on your own discretion, obviously. Okay, so thank you. With no further ado, we wanted to introduce our first panel speaker of the night, Alex Trey. So I wanted to introduce him because he's a co-founder and the CTO of GPT-0, a very famous name that you might have heard because since last year when ChatGPT was launched, it generated so many discussions everywhere, almost online, in person. And Alex, he joined someone else to co-found this company, which is the leading platform for detecting AI-generated text. Previously, Alex worked on the machine learning engineering team at Facebook, R&D at Uber's self-driving division, and published in leading machine learning conferences to understand how people interact. Alex has a bachelor's in science from Caltech and Master of Science in Computer Science from University of Toronto, and the 3 patents in machine learning already at such a young age. Congratulations, Alex. So now, Alex, let me welcome you to the virtual podium, and we'll give you applause, a round of applause. And we are eager to learn from you. How did you manage to achieve what you have achieved so far? So, Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon, for the kind introduction. So hi guys, my name is Alex. Today I'll be telling you a little bit, just taking, I assume I have around 15 to 20 minutes to give you a little presentation on my journey and also answer some questions. So let's get started. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So as you know from Sharon's description, today I'm one of the co-founders and CTO of GPT-0. To my right is my co-founder, Edward Tian, and together we are trying to solve a problem that's been created from AI. So just to give you a short walkthrough of what exactly we do, take a look at this article that I got from the web. Do you notice anything that's wrong or weird about it, especially from the text? So if it's not clear, it's actually, this article is written by AI. And not only that, they don't tell you that it's written by AI. So now there are hundreds of websites, news sites that are actually written by AI that are deceiving news consumers. If you now look in the bottom right, you can see that once this article is scanned by GPT-0, we can tell you that it was definitely generated with AI. So that's essentially what our startup does. And in March, we actually were fortunate enough to raise 3.5 million from VCs, from angels, to grow the business. So today we have over 2.5 million users, 100 enterprise clients, and we partner or we're featured by some of these organizations here. So how did we get here, and it's just especially starting from the start of my university. On my right, you can see I learned to put a pillow on my desk if I needed to sleep more quickly. So that was in 2016, one of my best hacks yet. So when I started university, I was trying to figure out this 3 questions. What can I be good at? What does the world need? And what can I love doing? And ultimately, what should I do with my life? And so I put can instead of what am I good at or what do I love? Because I think that these things can change. And sometimes you need to give it some time to explore before you really know. So I can start by telling a few stories about some of the early experiences I had that I think were a pretty important part of why I'm at GPT-0 today. So my first startup was in 2017, some time off of school, and with 2 friends, I created a chatbot to help people get professional guidance on buying complex products online. So think something like craft beer. It's not something that most of us understand well. And so we created a chat assistant to help you find the one that suits you. Part of why we wanted to do this is because we had a really exciting first client that was a Fortune 500 company. And through that process, even though, we weren't that legitimate, we weren't necessarily like getting investments, we also had really helpful and uncomfortable experiences learning what it was like being a founder, being someone who had to pitch to VCs, had to sell and cold call people, which was always never something to look forward to. And so we ended up doing a great first deal, but then we closed the startup because in 2017, the research in chatbots was simply not good enough for the startup to succeed and for it to work well in the real world. The next, shortly after, I actually pursued a second project called OpenMind. So at a hackathon at Yale University, we built an anti-newsfeed. It recommends content that you do not like reading, so that disagrees with your current, political bias. So we were fortunate enough to win one of the challenges at the hackathon and got interviews with 20 news networks, such as the one below, where we're featured in Fox. And while we got a ton of news coverage, in the end, I felt like we actually wasted a lot of it because we didn't want to release our imperfect demo, and we waited 6 months before we launched. And by then, a lot of the people who signed up on our waitlist or were saw us in the news just forgot who we were. And so that's another great takeaway and a lesson I learned from doing this experience. Overall, I continue to take small amounts of time, like weekends, to go and participate in hackathons. And while not all of them were any like some sort of winning experience, I think all of them taught me a little bit about, what was the new technology in the world, what are the pressing problems that people need solving, and what is like cool technology that we can iterate on. So from those experiences in college, I learned a few lessons. One is, perfect is the enemy of done. You shouldn't release something if it's perfect, because it's probably too late. I also learned I personally didn't like cold pitching people, but I knew I loved developing new technology. And so, if I did find some work, it probably wouldn't be in like direct sales. I also learned bad timing can kill a good idea, and sometimes that's out of your control. Doesn't mean you need to stick with that idea, but it's just something to acknowledge. And lastly, I learned that from doing all these startups myself, I think I was missing a lot of knowledge on how a well-functioning organization runs. And so I knew I wanted to get more mentorship and actually work at someone else's company when I graduated. So I think one question that I was asking myself was, what is the main purpose of your first job? And I think there's a lot of good answers to this. But for me personally, I think it's both building your skills and learning from a large group of talented people. And so pictured here is the company, the first one that I worked at outside after college, called Wabi. And I'll tell you a little bit more about why I joined and how it impacted me. So here's just for your knowledge, a brief summary of what we did. We were building a self-driving truck and training it in simulation. And so this is an example of our truck in pink, kind of driving around other cars in gray. So that was a really, really fun challenge. And it's right here in Toronto too. So for me, my first job, I was looking for an industry I felt like was challenging, impactful, and in demand. And at the time, no one had really solved self-driving. No one still has solved it, really. I also had more than one offer, and I had a choice between a 400-person Bay Area company who's paying me actually a bit more, also a 40-person company in Toronto. It's a new startup, a new opportunity, and a really brilliant team. And so I chose to go with that company, in part because I wanted to be really close to the decision makers and the early challenges of a company like that. And that's absolutely what I got. I felt like being at this kind of 40-person size company was a really great move because it's still small enough that you can, just bump into conversations with managers, go to like team planning meetings, but still have people who are much smarter than you teach you a thing or two. Lastly, I was also able to pursue my master's at U of T at the same time, where I learned, just from some of the best professors in machine learning. So I think one thing that was important for preparing me for kind of going and being my own founder was leaning in at work and trying to get more out of my work other than just the technical side. What do I mean? So first, I think some advice I would give about getting more involved and learning more about leadership and about soft skills is first, of course, fulfill your core responsibilities. Like you should do the work that you're assigned and make sure that's done well. But I think there's a few other things that I generally think help you to get more out of your work. And I think one is that I think being prepared for meetings where, especially for discussions where there's like open brainstorming and making useful contributions is something I see a lot of people not doing. And in part because, people don't want to think so hard or don't want to say something that might be perceived as a bad idea. But I think that helped me get into bigger discussions, help people build trust in me so that I could take on a bit more leadership roles, especially when, let's say my manager was off break, I would help run our meetings. I'd say third is trying to prioritize within the company what is the most important work and try to do that. And so early on, I switched myself from doing a lot of small tasks to try to take on one big challenge for the company. And I think that was really instrumental because first of all, I think it helped me get promoted, but also I think it got me a lot of time with the CEO, discussing the challenge, giving progress updates, and in general, really helping me to absorb how the CEO thinks about the problems in the company. And finally, or not finally, but fourth, I would say I tried to also resolve issues for teammates that no one else were helping them with. That helped me learn. And having that cross-team exposure, I think, was really helpful. Lastly, not to belabor the point, but I think it was also important for me to set time aside to ask managers, how do they make good decisions? How do they get where they are now? And what could I do to improve? And so, because all of that kind of thinking and big decision making often happens in the background just to save people like me time because I'm too junior. But I think actually, if you're motivated, managers are happy to give you time to help you understand how decisions are made and like what the strategic priorities of the company are. That's very important when you're starting your own thing because you're always prioritizing. Cool. So aside from my work, some other things I felt were helpful that you guys might not know about is that there's actually a lot of great communities for people who are aspiring entrepreneurs in order for you to get more exposure to the VC world and startup world. So on the left, I listed a couple venture capital firms or incubators that have fellowships. Essentially, these are programs that where either you get matched to a startup or you work for the VC fund and you get mentored by the VCs and by entrepreneurs on their journey, how they found a good company, how they found good co-founders. And so I did one with Builders VC with a friend who worked there. And I think looking at a startup from the VC mindset is actually very helpful because you know what exactly the market is like really trying to look for, approximately what are VCs looking for too. I think knowing how to think like a VC can really help you both find good problems and also the ones that you should ignore. So going all the way back to GPT-0. So in 2013, my co-founder Edward made this tweet launching GPT-0 to the public, getting 8 million views on Twitter and beyond. The day after, he reached out to me to join his project as CTO, which I did. And this is because of the work he knew I did at OpenMind, which happened, 5 years before. So I joined working part-time while still working at Lobby. And we just saw our traffic really climb from, 20,000 to 400,000 weekly active users. In addition, we saw investors start reaching out to us because of our coverage, because of the number of people who are using our product. others were referred to our network. And I learned one thing is that there are a lot of people who are willing to write you a 10 to 100,000 check to help invest in your startup. And so actually getting your first pre-seed, like first $500,000 to, get you and a couple co-founders working on a project for a year funded is actually not super, I think the hardest thing in the world. And so knowing the right people, of course, and solving the right problem is probably the hardest part. And then lastly, the big question is, why did I leave my dream job at Wabi, which really was a dream job? I think one is it would be harder to recreate the opportunity I just showed you than go back to my PhD in case it didn't work out. I also feel like we actually found a product that many people needed that not that many people are working on yet, which is not that common. It also aligned with my goal of being a technical leader of impactful work. And it felt like it was a good time in my life. I'm like 24, 25 to take bigger risks and commitments. And I think either way, if I went to entrepreneurship or stayed at my job, I would have been grateful and I still would have learned a lot. So I don't think it's like, do or die kind of thing. And so lastly, I'll share some key lessons I learned as an entrepreneur. And this is could be a whole other like 30-minute talk. One is try to solve real problems for customers and don't focus too much on how you do it because that doesn't really matter. It's not what people are paying you for. I think hiring the right team takes a lot of time and it's also very urgent. So it's a lot of something you'd probably spend a lot of time doing early on as a founder and you shouldn't be concerned about that. Lastly, I think it's on you to delegate and prioritize your own and your company's time to be very efficient so that, because there's infinite amount of things that you could possibly waste your time on. But knowing how to scale your own efforts is really crucial. And yeah, that's my intro talk / speed run of my career so far. I'm happy to maybe discuss a
Thank
little bit with Sharon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Alex. I truly enjoyed that little talk, and I think 20 minutes isn't enough, far from enough, to really learn from your interesting story and experience. And I meant to say at the beginning that your past is very much like many of the successful entrepreneurs or business leaders in high tech that you dropped out of school because you had a better option. So way to go. And another interesting thing is that when we read your bio, we saw all the glorious achievements. But when you shared, that's how we found out you actually have prepared yourself through all these years through your previous attempts, which didn't really work out. But as you said, every experience contributed to your success. We don't know how far Chat GPT-0 will go. We certainly hope it will go very far and it will become one of those famous names down the road that we will keep talking about. And very proud to see we know Alex who founded this company one day. We don't know that, but no matter how far GPT-0 will go, we know one thing for sure, you will go very far with your attitude and with the way how you're approaching the challenges and difficulties and obstacles on your way. So my question, interestingly, for you, Alex, is in this short amount of time you started GPT-0, you co-founded GPT-0, you have already achieved so much. You talk about raising fund for a few millions, like not a super challenging task, but it is indeed very hard, as anybody who has been engaged in any startup knows. So you have achieved so much, and with your main product launched and running, and I checked it out earlier today, and I saw that on your website some nice features and the services that you offer. But when I searched in Google of GPT-0, I saw so many different versions of it already. There's different websites and people are copying you and following that. So I can't imagine how challenging this will be down the road. So my question here for you is, what so far has been the biggest challenge in this process for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is the fact that you're not the only one trying to solve this problem, as you alluded to. So there are well-funded teams and companies that have decide to work on your problem area or pivot their business to solving the same problem you're trying to solve. And so in that case, I mean, and this is always the question in VC is once you get big enough, how do you defend your business? And so I think part of what we've done is, first of all, hired an amazing team, built the best machine learning model, but also, there's a lot of different business strategies that I had to me and my co-founder were not business background. And so I have to learn about, how do you price things in a way that keeps people committed to you? How do you create a history with your clients so that, they prefer to use your service? That's kind of conclude making the best services. And that part of that is, talking to your customers often and always to make sure what you think is what they need is actually what they need. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And originally, I had another question, which was, were there moments when you wanted to quit? Was it too hard? Like, okay, I'm out of here. But I dropped that question because from your presentation, I don't see you as a quitter at all. You have such an optimistic attitude. You turn every opportunity into a positive one. So that question is dropped. My one last question for you at this moment would be, what is the most enjoyable part being an entrepreneur for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think coming away from a customer call and really like seeing that people we're solving a real problem for people, that they really appreciate us existing. I think that's definitely the most satisfying part. I would say other parts of that include like also like being able to meet a lot of new people you wouldn't have otherwise, from investors to other founders, and kind of being in that position where all this learning actually is something that's like urgent and relevant to you. I think being able to use all those capabilities is really nice as well.
Wonderful. And I'm sure another very attractive aspect would be one day you become so influential for the world. You're going to make a big impact. So thank you so much, Alex. And please stay with us. And for the audience in the room, we do have another opportunity to ask more questions for Alex. So if you are curious about any part of Alex's story, feel free to put your question in the chat room, and we will be collecting those questions, and we'll ask the speakers again at the end of all the presentations. So thank you, Alex. Okay, our next presenter and panelist tonight is Ms. He Wei. So Wei is currently the Media Relations Lead, Global Communications at Deloitte. She worked as a journalist for a decade and also worked for international organizations such as the United Nations. Wei has 2 master's degrees, one of which is from the London School of Economics. Let's welcome Wei to the virtual podium to share her interesting journey and tell her stories. So Wei, over to you.
Thank you, Sharon. Just a second. Let me just share my screen.
Using the slideshow, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a slideshow page.
Yeah, on the laptop. On the right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Can you see me now? Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sharon, for the kind introduction as well. And I'm actually very honored to be part of this panel today. And I'm also very inspired by what Alex said just now, but I guess I'll be bringing a slightly different story here. So first of all, here's a backstage story for all of you. To my knowledge, the original theme for today's panel was young second generation career development. And then I soon realized that maybe I might be the outlier here because technically I am not a second generation. I can be a first generation, if you might call it that way. So the organizers very graciously, they added a slash to the theme, so it becomes what it is now, Young/Second Generation Development Forum. And then it made me question again, like, am I still young? But ultimately, I realized that I may fit either description, because I would rather prefer to think of myself more as a newcomer to Canada. I'm not an immigrant, because who knows where life will take me the next. So my Chinese name is He Wei, which aligns nicely with On Her Way. So you can see it here. I made a special slogan here, and it reflects my life's ethos, which is always moving, always exploring, always on the go. So On Her Way now has become my tagline. It is also my social media account on WeChat, which I will be sharing the QR code at the very last page of my presentation. So very briefly, I'll be walking you through briefly something about me and the 3 so-called unconventional career choices that I've made back in China, and my very journey to Toronto and how I landed my current job. And finally, I'll be sharing some of the core beliefs and values that I find helpful along the way. So we know that self-introductions can be cliche, but I feel they are a must here, because I guess most of you don't know me yet. So I was born and raised in Shanghai, which I can call it my home base until my mid-30s. So I went to Fudan University in Shanghai, and during that time, I was enrolled in an exchange program to study in Sweden, which I had to admit that I spent most of the time there traveling across Europe. So it was also there that led me to an internship at the UN in New York. So after that internship, I returned to China and I started working as a journalist, both in Shanghai and in Beijing at China Daily. And then I moved to London to complete my second master's degree at the London School of Economics, where I also worked a bit in journalism. So back in Shanghai, I joined a multinational company and later returned to the media sector again, and then focused more on social media and high-level executive interviews. So last year, my husband and I took this big decision that we decided to move to Toronto to start a new chapter in life. So I've spent more than 10 years, technically 13 years now, in the realm of media and communications. And I'm very lucky to have the opportunity to live and study and work in nearly 30 countries. I speak Mandarin, English, some French and Cantonese. I'm also a certified translator in Canada with specialized training as a conference interpreter. So you can tell that I'm a firm believer in globalization and cosmopolitanism. So given that today's session is primarily about career development, I thought I would try to stay away from the traditional, chronological overview of my career. Instead, I would like to focus on 3 critical career choices, which I find a little bit unconventional. I made before I relocated to Toronto, because Toronto is a story in itself. So here is a photo that you can see on the right-hand side is when I was conducting a live streaming session, a bilingual one, for my previous employer at China Daily. So the first career choice that I made is that upon graduation, I back then had a good fortune of juggling 4 different job offers. The decision finally boiled down to 2. One is a management trainee position at a telecom giant, another being the reporter role at China Daily today, which is my longest employer. Despite the telecom job offering a higher salary, at the end of the day, I chose the media job for 2 reasons. One, I know for a fact that I'm someone who is constantly filled with this, I would call insatiable curiosity of the world, and I'm not uncomfortable shattered to an office. So don't get me wrong, it was a decision that I made in my early 20s, and I always believe that one needs to make decisions based on their life stages. So journalism, I would argue even today, is what I see the best first job for so many people, because it fast tracks your personal growth and it gives you the access to high-profile individuals like very senior business leaders, CEOs, which is a rarity in most corporate settings. Second, I chose to work for an English language outlet over a Chinese media in order to leverage my existing strengths in English, which indeed later became what I would call a differentiator for me, even in the years to come. So the second key choice that I made was when I returned to Shanghai from London, where I was already working as a public relations officer at a multinational corporation. So back then, my former boss at China Daily approached me about a potential role to oversee like everything in social media in Shanghai. So back then, I did like weigh these different choices, and I couldn't resist. Even though journalism isn't really known for its lucrative pay, I still returned because I can envision myself to be having greater room for development at that stage of my life and have a bigger sense of autonomy. And I also realized that the fact that so many talented people have left journalism to join the PR world. So I did see a unique opportunity for me to stand out as long as I work hard enough. So finally, this decision bore fruit. During my second stint at China Daily, I got to interview over 50 global CEOs for Fortune 500 companies. And that very experience is kind of, helped me kickstart my freelance PR consulting business, because it really helped me accumulate my insights and experience, in which also laid a solid foundation for me for my current career transition. So the third major choice came when some of the leading Chinese internet firms, like 5-6 years ago, started offering me roles in their overseas PR positions. They even offered me, I would say, very enticing company stocks as incentives. But it didn't really take me too long to decline these offers because, here I'm not speaking of any specific company, but I'm just generally skeptical of some of their long-term business models and I would say, less than appealing corporate cultures where overtime working is highly appreciated. So this is simply contradictory to my belief of trying to strike a quality work-life balance. So now, shifting gears, let's talk about my transition into Toronto last year. So here is a photo where I was the host moderator for a panel and the annual gala for CCFA at the end of 2022, and was really lucky to have this opportunity to as a newcomer to Canada. So while I would not really want to delve into the detailed reasons behind my move to Canada, because it's a joint decision, a family decision, but it's still worth noting that I know that I'm someone who thrives on change. If I look back for almost 20 years, I've lived in a city for about 5 years before I started to feel the itch to relocate. So the pandemic, I would say, is the only thing that slightly disrupted this pattern. So it took me 7 years to move from Shanghai and now to Toronto. So now for anyone who is new to Canada and who maybe has tried to tip their toes in Canada's career market, would know a thing or two about this so-called Canadian experience. To me, this is such a catch-22, because how come I can have Canadian experience and when I am a newcomer in the first place? So this very dilemma can make breaking into the job market here a really uphill battle, I would call it, both mentally and financially. So I'm fully aware of this fact, and I started to devise a multi-tiered plan for myself. So firstly, my plan A is to find a job outright, and I've decided that I may not necessarily need to get another degree to get a job. All I need is in proper and opportunity. So I focus on job openings that are generally aligned with my skills and my interests, rather than just sending out CVs indiscriminately. And I also continued my freelance PR consulting venture, which is something that later I find out that my current employer valued a lot, and they said it proved to be invaluable experience to my current team. But now I'm sharing this with you because I was very lucky to have my plan A realized. But should my plan A fail, I would still have backup plans. One was to, pursue a PhD. I know that I've always known that there is a scholar in me. So I've actually established some contact with a University of Toronto professor who has already agreed to be my supervisor should I make up my mind to apply for the program in the next semester. Then we decided that we would get back together in September. So when I finally decided to tell him that, about this new job opportunity, that I have to postpone my PhD study, I did tell him that I'm still very interested in trying to collaborate with him on one of the projects that he's leading. And he said yes. So the second, I would say, plan was to capitalize on my certification as a translator here in Canada. I even received an offer as a medical interpreter role, which later I turned down. But it's always good to know that you have something at hand. You have this basic psychological and financial security so that you can reach out, you can afford to reach out and try the things that you want the most. So luck aside, I would say that always prepare yourself. When nothing comes up, it's very easy to get disappointed and very stressful. So what I do is I stick to my routines. And for example, I read news daily, I write from time to time commentary pieces, and I try to keep my language skills sharp by practicing Mandarin and English interpreting on a daily basis. So these habits really help me with my, my job interview. So lastly, I would say never underestimate the power of following up. So during my 2 months, there's a 2 months pause during my recruitment process because of a company reorg. But I didn't just stop there. I reached out to the HR department. I wrote to them twice. Even when I didn't really get a response the second time, I still held on to hope. So I guess my persistence, my patience, also, my proactiveness likely kept me in the running when the recruitment finally resumed in late June. So the final slide here, okay, last two final slide. I'm not actually a huge fan of giving people those 心灵鸡汤 or you can say motivational quotes to lift people's spirits. But here are truly some of the values and beliefs that I've held on to that, and I'm happy to share with you. The first one is, sounds cliche, but really worked out, is follow your heart. First, I'm not trying to say that you don't use your mind, by no means, but I'm just trying to say that don't merely chase opportunities that based on purely financial gains or what are the current trends, because fads fade away really fast. As I said, don't overcalculate because the things change very rapidly and you don't always get to keep up the pace. The second is always try everything. You mentioned, I remember I mentioned I studied in Sweden, the UK, and also got an internship opportunity at the UN. So basically, I managed to secure scholarships and funding opportunities all on myself, all by my own. I remember that for the UN opportunity, there's no funding. But I remember there was a Hong Kong-based funding, fund, who has given me scholarship in the past year. So when I received that offer from the UN, I tried research their contact on the internet, and I just wrote to them. I said, hey, I got this really exciting opportunity to be interning at the UN headquarters. But you know about Manhattan, how costly it can be. So are there any opportunities that you can maybe offer me some kind of funding? And then they replied me in a week, and in a month's time, they contacted my uni and said, okay, we're happy to sponsor the student to intern at the UN. So I always try everything because you never know what would come out. Third is excel, but in a smart way. I would say while health sectors like today, like programming or ESG may be very tempting, it's really crucial for you to assess if it's something that you're truly passionate about, or it's purely that you are driven by the trends. From the over 10 years of experience, I can tell that long-term success and really demands, true interest and true passion. Fourth one is always plan ahead, but at the same time, you should remain flexible. While achievements that seem to happen overnight are usually the result of careful planning and execution. So as I said, every 5 years I get to relocate, because every 5 years I reassess my goals and realign with my plans. So if you ask me now, yes, I can tell you that my next 5-year plan is already in the making, but I would rather keep it to myself until I have it realized. But at the same time, I said, don't overstretch or overwhelm yourself. While it's good to have a grand plan, adhering it too rigidly can be also counterproductive. So go and embrace the nature, make friends, let out your emotions, are also very important. And fifth one, I would say, I think Alex also mentioned a bit, is about mentorship. I would really agree that it's important to build your mentor network. I've actually write something in a WeChat article, which I will share. Like if you follow my WeChat accounts, you can find it in details. It's invaluable for you to have mentors from diverse backgrounds and industries and even age groups. Of course, and they are there to help you guide through your career and even life journey. Of course, you need to make the initiative. You need to reach out to these people. So to conclude, I would say that we should always embrace gratitude, because sometimes chance or luck can often shadow even the best laid plans. So try and maintain a sense of gratitude for every experience that you have and all the people that you've met along the way, whether they bring you joy or even lessons, because I always believe that every encounter serves a purpose in life. So with that, life is a journey, just enjoying the ride. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wei. Yes. The previous slide where you shared those Xinling Jitang, I think they were so valuable. And I took notes and I learned a lot as well. Originally, I did prepare to ask you a question about reading about your bio, knowing what an interesting experience you've had so far, moving from country to country, position to position, different sectors, etc. It just feels like it's so overwhelmingly successful and interesting and exciting. And I wondered what are the most important factors contributing to your success. But when I listened to your presentation, I realized the answers are in so many places, all over the places. Your determination, your positive personality, the way how you approach challenges, and you always are prepared to adapt to any new environment, all helped. Even though you only moved to Toronto around a year ago, we already felt that you're part of this community and you are so comfortable here and you know your way. You not only have plan A, you also have plan B. That's so wonderful. No wonder you get so far and you fly high. So thank you, Wei. My first question for you, of course, you haven't really touched on your own education background. And I'm curious, as someone who's in the education sector, I'm curious to know how your education helped you to get where you are right now, and how choosing the program you studied made any differences in your later career development, because usually journalism may seem to be not easy program to get into a good career path for many people, of course. And there are many successful people out there who pursue the journalism like yourself, right? But for many others, it may seem to be a program that's a little harder to predict the future. So if you can share with the audience who may be high school students who are struggling right now, trying to determine what program they want to choose for themselves to pursue in the university, we hope to hear from you, your perspective. What's the relationship between the education background with your career?
Oh, thank you, Sharon. This is a really excellent question, and I definitely agree with you when you said like journalism is not the easiest, major for you to get a job, especially one that is high paid. But for me, I've never regretted it, and I would say if there's a one key word in terms of like how my education background has contributed to my, I won't say a success, but like my career development so far, I would say you should know how to leverage. It applies to any major. So for my case, I have my bachelor's and my first master's degree in international relations. I chose this major is because from when I was about 6 years old, I'm very into current affairs. I can still recall like how excited I am when I listen to all those like world affairs. I know it's a rarity maybe for girls, perhaps it's a stereotype, but that's just me. So I know me from day one. So when I began my my journey, like my career at working at China Daily, so I chose to work for the foreign affairs team because though I had never formally studied journalism, I know that my understanding, my academic training of international issues would allow me to concentrate purely or solely on improving my writing skills. This would create I would say, a distinct advantage over my peers because they had to grapple with both writing skills and understanding the context of the news, but I only need to focus on writing. So my specialized knowledge made it easy for me also to get credible sources and experts in the field as my sources for interview. So consequently, I was sent to Beijing to work for nearly a year, where I gained valuable project and reporting experience. So this proved very precious for me when I later moved back to Shanghai. So this track record gave me and earned me more responsibilities and opportunities. So my next pivot was to into the emerging field of new technologies, because back then it was a relatively unexplored territory. And because I've honed my writing skills in shortly, like in 1 year's time, so I was given the opportunity, to develop new skills through about new technologies like internet and like telecom through on-the-job. I would call it on-the-job training or on-the-job learning. And then this reporting background then led me to pursue another degree in media and communications in the UK. And because of my diverse work experience, it helps me write a compelling personal statement, which in turn helped me secure a scholarship, which is I would say, it's not an easy task to get a scholarship to study in the UK. So upon completion of this second degree, I then leveraged this degree to land a position as a media relations officer at the German company that I previously worked in Shanghai. And so my current employer said when they hired me this time around as the global media relations officer role, they said they hired me for several reasons. One is my understanding of current affairs. Second is my writing skills, because they've seen my writing and they really liked it. My expertise in media relations, of course. And for me, it is also a huge boost because this is also for me the first time to be taking on a truly global role. Finally, if I may, I would see myself a believer of lifelong learning. So today I'm honing my skills in data analytics, and I'm trying to catch up on things, on basics, of course, of generative AI. Don't get me wrong, I know for a fact that I won't really train myself as a data scientist because I won't have the competitive edge there, but I know that this knowledge would equip me to apply the quantitative and predictive analysis to my current tasks, whether it's about launching a campaign or monitoring media trends. So I guess I'm trying to say here is that always like keep honing your skills and always identify what is your differentiator, especially you are standing among a group of people with similar backgrounds, and that's how you will stand out.
Thank you so much, Wei. Yes, and throughout your presentation slides, we've seen so many different side of you. The pictures felt like different people. There's the sharp you, the professional side of you. There's very beautiful of you, confident of you, and the scholar you. So that's so amazing, and we won't be surprised in a while when we see you again. There will be a different way again. And congratulations, and thank you very much for sharing your story. And for those audiences who wanted to know more about Wei's story in the background, feel free to post your questions in the chat, and then we will get back to the Q&A section very soon. Thank you, Wei. So our next speaker, Javen Wang. And Javen is a software product designer at Shopify. And he has a Master of Human-Computer Interaction from the University of Washington. And he previously worked with Microsoft and Intel on multiple projects as a graduate student. And he holds a Bachelor of Chemical Engineering from the University of Waterloo. And he also published as a co-author on hydrogen fuel cell research. Wow, that's a green energy tech sector. Interesting background there, Javen. So welcome, Javen, to the podium, to the virtual podium. And Javen, can I ask you to maybe introduce yourself more in detail to our audience?
Sure, happy to. Let me see. Are folks able to see the presentation here? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Hi, nice to meet you, everybody. My name is Javen. I'm currently a software designer at Shopify. To kind of talk about my story a little bit, I think as someone who is very intrigued and interested in traveling, I'm also a first-generation Canadian, not a second-generation one. So thank you for having me here today, and thank you for the warm introduction, Sharon. But I was born in Beijing, so super big city, but I was raised in Toronto for most of my life. And I was fortunate enough to actually spend a year studying in Seattle while I was going through my graduate degree, and also had a chance to work in New York City briefly. So why are kind of these places where I have spent a tremendous amount of time important? Because I would say all four of these places, China being, mainland China being what we know about it today, Eastern philosophy, Toronto, a lot of strong Canadian values, West Coast United States has a different set of cultures and customs, and New York City as well. And because I work as a designer today, like having a better understanding of people, cultures, and contexts, I think it's incredibly, incredibly relevant. And this has helped enrich the way I approach both my work and design, just basically throughout my career so far. But to kind of fast forward things a little bit, I did attend University of Waterloo, as Sharon has mentioned, as a Bachelor of Chemical Engineering. And during my time as a bachelor, I did publish research on hydrogen energy. This is something that's a bit more like up and coming right now, but because this is for folks who are not in academia necessarily, but oftentimes in technological research, from the time when a technology is first discovered and innovated upon to when it actually reaches consumer use in the industry, there's usually anywhere between 10 to 20 year lag time. So fingers crossed, this was published in 2020. So hopefully by 2030, you'll see more hydrogen fuel cell cars on the road, and you'll be like, oh yeah, Javen, he talked about this one back then in 2023. But it takes a while for this stuff to kick in, but quite happy with this work that I did here. Secondarily, after chemical engineering degree, I actually went to the University of Washington and made a very, very hard pivot towards human-computer interaction and design, which brought me into the UX design and software design field. And one of my favorite times while I was going through grad school actually was working for educational institutes alongside Microsoft. Like we had a sponsored project one thing that is really interesting to know is actually in the United States, because educational sectors are chronically underfunded, a lot of the times, if a teacher wants to do something, do an activity with their classrooms, they have to pay out of pocket themselves for these kids. So one of the challenges that we had was to design kits under $5 that would help teach an important concept in these American classrooms. So something that is financially feasible for teachers and also imparts a useful educational value for the students as well. You can learn more about it at my portfolio website, but feel free to check it out afterwards. And today I work at Shopify, and this is known as the Entrepreneurs Platform, and I'm happy to talk about it at a later time. But in terms of some of the lessons learned, so thank you, Alex, for this idea. But so for example, because of my undergrad degree, I fell in love with design as a career path. And this is where I discovered, hey, you know what? Chemical engineering, it's not necessarily for me, but that doesn't mean that I regretted even a moment that I spent in my engineering degree, because this taught me how to think logically and how to appreciate technical folks and how to work with technical people. One thing that I learned from master's is this concept called systems thinking. The world is complex. We live in a world of shades of gray. There's no such thing as black and white. There's never one solution that can address every single issue. Most complex problems can only be tackled through a combination of different solutions. But at the end of the day, trying to solve the most important problem and identifying what those most important problems are and what the most effective solutions are for those top problems, that's the fundamentals of systems thinking. And right now, currently, I'm very happy at my job at Shopify. And this is a company who strongly embraces craftsmanship. So it's not just about how you think. It's not just about how you it's not just like stuff that's for show. It's not just about how you talk about things, but actually like the stuff that you put out in the world. So you have to, the only way to achieve mastery is by consistent practice. So these are some of the high level takeaways that I have from, I would say, the major chapters in my life right now. But I know there's a bunch of questions that Sharon has prepared. So I'm more than happy to pass it back to Sharon here.
That's right, Javin. Thank you very much. Indeed, first of all, I have to comment those pictures that you included in the slides. They are so amazing. I was looking at them, like appreciating the picture, the beauty of all the places that you've been to. And I think the last one was from Banff or somewhere. I see the snowy mountains. So thank you. Yes, my first question, naturally, when I read your bio, it came to my mind. So you studied chemical engineering at Waterloo, yet your current job seems to have nothing to do with that at all. And you sort of said you did not regret choosing chemical engineering program for studying. But I do wanted to know at what point you made that shift in your career choice and what drove those changes, and how, after you made the change, your education still made a difference or contributed to your success today.
Fantastic question. I think the main reason, honestly, pretty humorously, is because I was not very good as a chemical engineer. One thing about Waterloo actually is it requires most students to do internships. And basically, I couldn't find chemical engineering internships, no matter how hard I tried. But when I applied for some design internships, I was hired very readily and at a higher salary than what I would have had based on the offers I had as an engineer as well. So initially the decision that I made was, this one is higher paid as a designer, but chemical engineering jobs, there's lower pay. Let's just go with design. And the reason why I was able to find these design internships is because when I was in high school, I would basically design websites for fun. So I had a lot of skills that I accumulated over the years from using Photoshop, and then use some basic HTML and CSS just kind of like going in. So I was able to do a mix of both UX design as well as front-end development. And from that was kind of an easy pathway into the design field as an intern at the time. but like pretty much like after that first internship, it really unlocked something in me, and I realized, you know what, I actually don't like chemical engineering as a career path all that much. I really enjoy design. I enjoy the type of work that I'm doing. I enjoy the types of projects that I'm intersecting with. And I really, really like the people that I worked with, because like in the engineering culture is quite different from the design culture as at the end of the day. And these are kind of almost like different stereotypes as a joke. But the reason why I don't regret it is because it teaches you how to think logically as an engineer. It's like in engineering, one of the things that we always joke about is like the bridge that you build, it doesn't need to be 100% functional all the time. It just needs to be 95% functional. So knowing what the right trade-offs to make sure that the build is constructed quickly, but still, you know, holds up to the test of time, it's kind of like important skills to have, I think. And so it's really about how you learn to and another thing that's really, really big that I found to be very helpful in my career path as a designer so far is an appreciation for data and understanding how to do data analytics, understanding how to interpret data when it's given to you. Because the stereotype of a designer is somebody who can't even do like simple math and simple numbers, but like engineers, that's like all you deal with day in, day out. And being a designer who can like both read through code, understand code, and also kind of run these queries myself, kind of like supercharges the way that I approach my job today. But
Excellent. So, Jevin, if you don't mind to stop sharing the screen so we can put you on the spotlight. We can all, yeah, there you are. Thank you. Yes, and so I guess in summary, your suggestion would be just be open-minded. You can choose a path that you at the time felt it was correct for yourself, but still keep your options open. When opportunities come, and just jump on, and that's how it worked out for you. Yeah, I know when we are having the conversations, you corrected me about your title is not a software engineer, but rather a software designer. So do you want to quickly tell us what's the difference between that? I think many of people, audiences here may not know exactly the difference between software engineer versus a software designer. So what do you do that's different from an engineer?
yeah, happy to talk about that one. I think the difference is the way you are kind of trained as a designer. So I'll say the most prolific designer of the 21st century, I would say, is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is not someone who writes code. He is not someone who assembles the phone, and he's not someone who necessarily knows the technical details of, you know, what CPU is being used. He's not the CTO of the company. But what Steve Jobs does is he creates a vision for what should be built at an organization level. And also he has just a fundamental understanding of both what customers would solve a customer's problems, but also what customers are willing to pay for. So at least in my capacity as a product designer today, a lot of what I do is identifying, one, what problems are worth solving for customers, and two, how do we get people to pay for the solutions that we're offering, and like how do we make these solutions valuable? So it's about identifying the right solutions and having a vision for what that solution looks like, whereas I think engineer leans more into making sure that the thing that is being created is built out in an excellent way, in a way that is cost effective. So it's my role is more business oriented in terms of decision making than it is on the actual creation.
Sounds more fun to me. And Steve Jobs is absolutely a great example here. So thank you. That answered my question beautifully. And as a graduate student, you worked with high-tech companies like Microsoft and Intel. These are very big companies that people dream of going to work. And so did you wanted to share with us some key learnings from these experiences and how they shaped your career decisions later on?
That's really interesting. The collaboration with Microsoft was very, very eye-opening in terms of the type of work that I would want to do at the end of the day, because I think Microsoft is an interesting organization is one of the biggest tech companies that have phenomenal work-life balance, actually. A lot of the people there, they have worked at the organization for something like 30 to 40 years. They have full-fledged families. They go to work at 9 a.m. in the morning and then they go home at 5 p.m. in the afternoon. So, but despite that, like they're one of the, like I would say one of the top tech companies when it comes to just like pushing when it comes to research specifically, and having an appreciation for what Microsoft does on that realm is certainly very, very fascinating. But I think a lot of folks who work in the tech industry kind of like think, you know, in order to be successful, in order to work for these big companies, they always come with extremely like excruciating hours, long hours, hard work, and you know, you have to kind of like either pick life or work, but not necessarily the case. Microsoft and Intel, because I don't know if it's just because the company culture or maybe because they're more successful, but it really kind of set the pace that, you know, work-life balance is indeed possible. You can indeed have a place that you will enjoy working, at least, and can see yourself working there for a long, long time to come. Shout out to Shopify as well. That's kind of one of the reasons why I work at Shopify today, is this is a company that values their employees and make sure you are like you want to work and you like working. So
Okay, so you're a good ambassador for these high-tech companies. But what about the challenges? Like, are there anything that you think you wanted to share with the audience about working in the big companies, in these big companies? What are the very, you know, challenging moments or aspects of those experiences?
yeah, so I won't sugarcoat this. So in the past 16 months, I survived 2 rounds of layoffs at Shopify now. Like the thing is with all these tech companies, just the economic state surrounding tech investment has been shrinking drastically because of the interest rate increases. VC funding has dried up a lot. So like I think in Alex's example, the fact that he was able to raise funds even as far back as spring break, I think that's exceptional. That is exceptional product. The landscape has really, really changed, and I think I was fortunate to have entered the industry when I did, because for most folks here who have had experience interviewing junior designers, junior engineers, entering the workforce for these tech companies for the first time, they'll know there's a lot of folks trying to get into the funnel, but there's not a lot of positions. And you're going to have basically, like when I was competing, it was maybe, you know, 10, 12 people to one role. Now that number looks more like 30 to 40 for each entry level position. It's ridiculously tough right now, and the bar has raised a lot. So some of the challenges, I think one of the things I did, it was in order to basically survive these layoffs and also kind of come on top as a result of it, is making myself indispensable to the project team that I'm on. Like 2 months before like these layoffs happened, I specifically advocated to take on more challenging projects. So like basically, like I want to reference, you know, Alex's slide as well, like asking your manager, asking your lead, like pushing really, really hard to be placed on impactful and indispensable projects. So you're difficult to replace and painful to replace for the organization is incredibly important if you want to avoid layoffs, especially in our current economic situation, I would say.
Thank you, Javan. But would you suggest those people who are listening to the sharing right now to avoid choosing the path for the moment? Or are you optimistic this is only temporary? The challenges are only temporary?
Wow, that's I honestly I don't have a crystal ball, and I'll tell you right now, our CEO isn't exactly optimistic about things returning to the way it was. The era of free money has kind of dried up, and I don't foresee interest rates falling back down to the 1 to 2% the way it was back in the day. I think we all need to adapt in this new world. That is not to say, like, if you are talented, if you're eager, absolutely, I think high tech is one of the best places for you to learn and grow as a person. But I can't predict the future. And based on what my executives say, who are much more in tune with you know, what the Federal Reserve is doing in the US and also what the Bank of Canada is doing in Canada, they don't see things returning to the way it was
Okay.
like 5 years ago, for example.
That is a very tough question, yes. Okay, then let's shift a little bit on the other side of your experience. And I was also very curious about your interest in hydrogen fuel. Like that's a different area in my view. And you've had some strong interest in that area. And I also published an article in there. But now you're a software designer. How are these two experiences connected with each other? Are you just keeping your options open, or you think there's some logical connection here?
So my one of the best advices that I've got is never half-ass anything. It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? If you're on a path, walk that path down all the way to the end until you could see the end entrance and put all of your energy into it, put all of yourself into that path, and have like basically live with no regrets. And the reason why I pursued down the hydrogen route is because I was like, I was interested in green energy at the same time that I was interested and started applying for UX design related master's programs. But I decided to basically pursue both and see how far I can get and stretch myself as much as I can. Logical connection wise, honestly, no, but also I'm a firm believer that there's no skill that is ever wasted.
Absolutely, agree. Yes, and another interesting point here is you have done some graduate work and you've published as an undergraduate student. That's pretty amazing. And so now you work in industry. And what's your view of industry and academia? Like, how do they integrate with each other better? And what are the opportunities for collaboration in the tech world and in academia?
I would say the major difference is, oh wow, everything, to be honest. I think the biggest one, if I had to point to it, it has to do with funding. Academia, there's a lot of it depends on the whims of political entities that is funding these programs. So for example, certain governments would have different interests in, like, for example, like this year, they really want to invest in green energy. Next year, they're like, you get a new president who really, really doesn't believe in climate change, then these funding will stop, or the enthusiasm will stop, or like your projects will get pulled. Same thing, I've heard the same, especially in medical research as well. Like it's very, very heavily influenced by politics. Whereas, you know, in the industry work, I work for a publicly traded company. A lot of it depends on the stock market. So you do have this master that's outside of your control that kind of influences the way you work. But in the industry, at the end of the day, your job is not necessarily to progress human knowledge. Your job is just to make money for these corporate entities. Like basically every project that you do, it needs to see return on investment in a short span of time. Whereas, like I mentioned, in academia, you could publish a research, but the industry may not necessarily pay for these research or adapt these technology until 10 to 20 years down the line. So I'll give you a really good example. You see how Tesla, how successful they are today. The batteries that they're using, that was like pioneered in like in the mid 1990s. So like 20 years before they saw a market, before they became financially successful today. So like it's like these are very, very different things. But I think I'm a more impatient person, and I want to see the stuff I'm working on, see market, you know, in ideally within the year, but you know, 2 to 3 years, I can wait that long. 20 years, I think it's too much. I'm 28 today. If I put out a research today and I see the stuff being used by people, by my parents, when I'm 50, I think that's too long of a time to wait. So
you never know. You can keep both work going. Your academic research will likely maybe one day become very important and critical in the hydrogen, you know, alternative energy sector, while making your immediate contribution to the community through your important tech work as a designer at Shopify. So thank you so much, Javin. That was an excellent sharing. And the audience, feel free to post your question, and we'll invite Javin back to the podium later on. So thank you. So now let's welcome our next panelist tonight. That's Anina Liu. So Anina is a different outlier here as well. So we try to pull the panel with different backgrounds and the different stories, different type of stories to entertain everybody here tonight, or to unite everybody from a different angle. So Anina, she's actually the youngest one of all panelists. She's a current student at Western Ontario University, and she studies economics and also the Ivey Business School. And her interest background, even though she's still a current student, she has already interned as a mortgage agent and a credit analyst at the Rifle Holdings Group. So let's welcome Alina to the podium to give us more details about her background.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you, Sharon, for the warm introduction. Let me just share my screen first. A slideshow. Can everyone see my screen? All right,
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a great honor for me to join everyone else here. I know we have a bunch of very talented, established, successful entrepreneurs with backgrounds in, from what I just heard, in engineering, designing, comp sci, and journalism, media. And as Sharon just said, I'm low-key an outlier because I am in second year of university. And as you guys could all see, the profile there was a little blank compared to all our other panelists and speakers today. But I would like to, I guess, focus on a different perspective and aspect. Since my journey is only, a few years long, what I can share is only last year of high school, first year of uni, and my last summer of like all my internships and part-time jobs and what I'm experiencing right now. Hopefully I can open that up a little more, focused on the school aspect. I want to zoom that in and have a more detailed explanation of my journey and just what I learned along the way. And also I would be kind of focusing on another target audience, I guess, for high school students or people just starting out, just going into uni. Okay, so I'll just do a brief introduction about myself, and I know Sharon has prepared lots of questions, so we'll get the discussion going after that. So my journey starting from high school, I don't want to, let the timeline go back too much, but also I'm not a second generation. I'm a first generation immigrant to Canada. I was born in China, specifically Harbin, but then I went to school in Dalian as well. So I came to Toronto with my family back in elementary school, halfway through elementary school, actually. For high school, I went to York Mills CI, which is in Toronto, and proceeded to go to Western University. So in first year, I studied psych. And now in second year, I actually transferred majors and transitioned into an economics student, hopefully pursuing my HBA degree at Ivey starting third year. And I can explain more about the format of Ivey Business School later, because I get a lot of questions from high school students as to why I'm not necessarily in a business school right now. And I usually have to spend a lot of time, explaining that. So I can definitely explain that. And yeah, as I said, my focus will mainly be on just the experience I had and the multiple advice and a lot of the things that I learned, especially in the past year. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is to just take you guys through my journey, I guess. So starting from uni applications, this sounds a little bit, like on the simpler side, as our other speakers were talking a lot about, entrepreneurship and their companies and their achievements. So I just want to take you guys back into more of a student side of things for a little bit. So in grade 12 for unit applications, please feel free to also drop any questions about university applications down in the chat. Back in grade 12, I did apply to a bunch of business programs. I basically covered all the business programs in Ontario. I didn't do any out of province or the States. So I didn't apply to any American colleges. I applied to Rotman, 2 other campuses of U of T, Scarborough and UTM, Queen's Commerce, Western Ivy, Waterloo Farm, and a few more like smaller business programs. I was very honored. I was lucky to have all of those offers in hand, but because I'm a very indecisive person, I had a very, very hard time deciding which university to go to. And of course, finally decided on Western. And I can also elaborate more on how I decided on which uni to go to and the factors influencing my decision later in our discussion as well. If the pictures look sketchy to you, they're not photoshopped. I just try to cut out the middle part where it has my personal information. So they all look very, cropped out and sketchy. So that's why. And after grade 12, after uni started, I think first year of university would be definitely a very fundamental transition for anyone. So in first year during my transitioning, there was a lot of things that I kind of would need to get used to. And I think this would be, also a great lesson for any incoming university students or students who are still in high school to kind of learn or like expect or look forward to. Some of those things would be first res life, so living alone for the first time, being in residence, living with a bunch of different people on your floor, or even like random roommates, and just juggling that while you have to adjust for the pace of university. So for any high school students here, I know we probably have a lot. The pace of university is very different from high school. High school was still, I know, like for the Western culture, is already a very like autonomous mode back in high school, but compared to university, is still pretty much, I would say, spoon-fed to an extent, because you would still have your teachers, like reminding you about deadlines and all that, and they would do homework checks. And in uni, you are basically on your own, and no one cares if you are doing any of your assignments, because you have a lecture of 3, 4, even 600, 700 people, and your professors can definitely, like, I don't think they will be able to keep up. So just adjusting to that, and very heavy exams are definitely 2 biggest things that I had to transition into in first year, and I would love to take any questions about how I adjusted to those. And then also the social life, especially when you are living in residence and joining different clubs and extracurricular activities, were definitely hard to juggle with as well. And I know for anyone who are thinking of maybe going to Western, or incoming students at Western University, maybe if you just came and you're first year at Western University, happy to answer any questions about the social life here. I know there's a lot of rumors about Western being a huge party school. Love to take any questions on that and how to, adjust to that, perhaps, get more involved or avoid that kind of culture if that's something you're looking at. And I did have a few more slides prepared, but they are surrounding the topics of my discussion with Sharon. So I'm happy to pass it back for now. And as the discussion go on, I would be happy to share those slides and kind of, center my talk around that as well.
Thank you, Anila. Yes. So even though you're the youngest, I think some of the suggestions or advice you gave to our audience may be the most fresh-handed. They will know immediately. My first question, of course, would be, yes, you went into business school. You're studying in Ivy, one of the top business schools in Canada. I know that the business schools are becoming very competitive these days. Hard to get in, lots of applicants, a lot of interest in high school students to pursue the study of business engineering, business, computer science, and health science. Those are the top sought after programs. So for you, what drove your decision to pursue business study? Was it because it is trendy and hot and competitive and it may give you a good job down the road, or what factors helped you to make that decision? At what point you knew what you wanted to study?
For sure, great question. So I think that's for sure a struggle for a lot of high schoolers, not knowing what they are, trying to go into, or not sure what they want to study in, the initial stage of high school, which is completely understandable. I actually do have a slide prepared on that. I was going to talk about that. So the reason why I decided to study business, as Sharon, you just said, it is becoming very competitive. As well as a lot of the comm sci and health sci programs. I know for my year specifically, Waterloo comm sci was very, very competitive, probably like 2-3 people per high school that got in, at least in our area in Toronto. And then Mac Health Sci, McMaster, always the most competitive program there is. Business programs, they remain to be very competitive year to year. So the reason why I study business, so the first initial, thing that inspired me, that drove me to study business is my involvement in Junior Achievement and DECA back in grade 10 and 11. I know DECA is cliche. It's like every single business student will somehow be involved in DECA, but me as well. So back in grade 10 and 11, I was involved in Junior Achievement. That was a entrepreneurial program hosted by Junior Achievement's platform, and it was sponsored by a lot different big name companies. My program specifically was sponsored by Rogers. So they would have volunteers from Rogers, like employees from Rogers, who would volunteer their time into having meetings with a bunch of high school students from the GTA area every week for around, I would say, 3-4 hours to come up with a business idea. So to form a startup together, we would have, now that I think of it, back when I was in grade 10, I didn't really understand it. Now that I'm actually in a business program, it was pretty realistic for high school students. So I definitely recommend that. We would have we accumulate shares, we sell common shares and preferred shares to shareholders. We have our initial proposal, we have our bank accounts associated with the company, we have our production, we do real productions with real manufacturers of our product or services. We do launch them, we have trade shows, and at the end you do liquidate. So it's a completely free program, but if you do make money, you get that money back with your share, maybe double, triple, quadruple your share as well. For me personally, did not make that much money, just barely covered the share that I put in, but that was a very valuable experience for me. And that kind of, tapped into my interest in building a business and managing it in the future. So that's why I kind of got into the business field. And another reason for me is because I was also inclined to study, I think my second choice was biology, which is really different from business. But I was interested in the genetic side of biology. But business for me was more of a way of thinking. I think studying business in undergrad is a mindset rather than any sort of technical knowledge that you learn. To be completely honest, for anyone who's going into the business side for undergrad, you might feel like you're not learning anything, because a lot of my friends who are in engineering, comm sci, medical science, or med sci at Western, they have a bunch of textbooks, they're learning a bunch of formulas every day, their notebooks are like this thick, and then you have the business students who are going to their consumer behavior class and then their organizational management class, and you feel like you are not objectively learning as much material, but it comes down to the way you think, the way you solve problems, the way you interact with other people, which to me was very important, because I believe that people skills over everything. Maybe that was a little, too black and white, but I think people skills is something that's very important for anyone working in any sort of field, whether you're working in a corporate, research, entrepreneurship. I think knowing how to interact with people and having your own way of problem solving is always so important. And then having that major, which trains and hones in on your way of thinking, would open you up to a variety of possibilities. So that's kind of why I decided to study business. And I thought something that would be helpful for high school students would be kind of choosing in between the business programs and universities. So I like to just elaborate a little more on
Yeah,
that
would
end
be-
of things.
That would be a great
Um,
way to expand this, because I know many people are struggling, not just you. I know you mentioned that you're having a hard time making your decision, but I know many who pursue business studies were choosing between, U of T, Rothman, or Queen's Smith, or Western Ivy, or even UBC, or other programs possible. So yes, please let us know what help you to make your decision, and how the business schools are different from each other, from your
Mhm.
perspective.
For sure. Of course, like every business school has its very unique advantage. My personal favorite is Ivy. That's why I chose this. So a little bias, can't be that impartial here. But just from my understanding, back in high school when I did the research, and now that I'm actually immersed in this program and interacting with a lot of business students from other business programs as well, what I learned is that just to share like a little bit, this could be like an hour talk, but just to share a little bit, Rotman, McGill, and UBC are more towards the academic side from what I know and from what I interacted, like how I interacted with people from those programs. They are more lecture based. They're more heavy on academics and technicals. So Rotman is very, very exceptional in their accounting areas. A lot of people get into the big fours. So things like that, accounting and the technicals on that, they're definitely very strong, and they have very good names. Rotman, McGill, and UBC Sauder, they're all very high-ranking business schools. So that's the advantage of those three business programs, I would say. On the other hand, for Ivy and Queen's Commerce, so Smith, those two are more on the opposite side of the other business programs. They are pretty similar in their own field. So Ivy, I would say, very strong in consulting and finance as well. Queen's also very strong in those two areas. Not so much accounting compared to the other business programs, of course. So for Ivy, my favorite part would be the 2+2 model. So that means that for the first 2 years, you're at Western, you're not in the Ivy Business School. You are in any other major that you choose within Western University. That's why I had the privilege to do psychology for a year and then now transition to economics for another year before I go into Ivy. A lot of people that you meet in the classrooms of Ivy, they come from arts and science, they come from like music. Like I know someone who studies like piano right now, they want to go into business for their last 2 years. And then you also have comm sci background, engineering background, you have civil eng, you have chemical eng, and then you have a bunch of other backgrounds who come together to that business classroom, which I really like because you get to learn a lot from other people who have different background as you. It's just an example, a very quick example for that. I did a case comp last year, a case competition with someone who's in Ivy but studied psychology in their first 2 years. And it was very, very interesting as to how they approach case competitions, because usually you have a very strict formatting for case comps, which is another big, big story. But for this girl that I met who studied psychology the first 2 years, the opening that she came up for a group for that case comp was something about, actually it sounds a little odd and random, but something about planting a tree and watering those trees, which represents like an educational aspect of the topic that we were talking about. And then she kind of did like a full circle ecosystem and compare that to the system that we were building, like the product that we were coming up with for our case comp. And that actually got us second place for that case competition. So I think that different perspective in those business classrooms really do help and foster the way you think. That's why I personally chose Western. And then another thing is the culture. I think for Queens and Western, the culture are more tight and the community is definitely closer, because I know U of T is more of a communal school, which is again better for technicals. So that's kind of the aspects I was thinking about, and hopefully that helps anyone who's in between or in the middle of picking universities.
Thank you. That's very helpful. The 2+2 model sounds a very unique but also valuable model, allowing students with different background to study business together. So that's
Mhm.
really wonderful. So this will bring me to my next question about your internship or co-op opportunity that you've already taken, even though you're only your second year in university, that you did internship at Rifle as a mortgage analyst. And so how was that? And why did you choose to do that? So did you have an interest in that career path? And also, when you're doing it, how long did you do it? What was your job about as a student?
Mhm.
And also, was it what you were thinking it was? Was there any surprises when you were doing that? How is it different from your university classroom learning experience? I'm sure you learned a lot in the intern opportunity experience, but how does that compare to what you learned from your profs in the university?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for the question. That's a fantastic question. Genuinely, now that I look back after the summer's already ended, I think the internship that I did at Refill is probably one of the most valuable, periods or learning opportunities that I've had in my life, because I think it kind of pivoted or transitioned the way I think and my mindset about pursuing careers in the future, or about designing a path for my own university internship journey in the future as well. So I also have a slide on that, I'm pretty sure. Yes, I do. So my internship at Refill, just to answer the questions first, I did that for 4 months, started in May when my school year ended, and finished end of August. So my role there at the very beginning, so I was looking for more of a finance related role, as every single business major student in their first year internship. I do want to talk about that whole like business internship mindset a little later on, maybe, hopefully, just to relieve the stress for all of our incoming business students, because it is very, very stressful for recruiting. I'm sure like everyone here who's more experienced know the difficulties of recruiting in this time period for anything related to finance, investment banking, private equity roles as well. So initially, just like every other business students, I was looking for anything related to finance to put on my resume for my second year internship. But I think this internship was so much more than that as time went on. So at first I was on more of the administration side, because again, for the mortgage department where I worked for the mortgage and debt financing credit department. So for that department, it was genuinely hard to be doing something tangible if you don't have enough technical background or knowledge in that field. So at the beginning, I was more just getting used to the environment, getting used to like an office day job, and helping around with more administrative stuff, and reading a lot of the company manuals, their investment opportunities, and their guidelines, just to get myself more involved and more knowledgeable in the field. And then as time went on, maybe a month in, I would say, after helping a lot of the fellow mortgage agents to do some of their work, I had this like literally not even thought, I just had this thing click where I was like, maybe I think I should try being a mortgage agent and get that license, because I'm privileged to have that opportunity to be surrounded by professionals who are like 20 years, 10 years into this field. And it would be such an amazing thing to get that mentorship. And since I already had the opportunity, I decided to seize that opportunity. It took me around 2-3 weeks, got my license very quickly, and now I am a registered mortgage agent at Refill at 18 years old, which I consider to be
Wow.
quite quite an accomplishment. Maybe not as accomplished as what's been shared in the panel, but I just thought that the opportunity was like probably once in a lifetime opportunity where you are, you know, immersed in this environment. And I was like, it would be, you know, very much a loss if I didn't do something about it. So that's how I kind of got into the mortgage side. And after I was registered, it was easier for me to help out. One, because I had a legitimate license, and two, because, you know, I did, and like I genuinely did have more knowledge on this aspect. And I would say that the last 2 months was more, you know, handling the mortgage transaction, doing more things on the credit and risk analyst part, and then conducting a lot of communications with the lender side, I would say, and getting in touch with clients, getting in touch with underwriting procedures for mortgage deals. So as of right now, I would say I've handled around loan amount, probably around 20 million. Not all of them closed, rarely any of them closed, to be honest. But that's the amount of loans that did go through me and that I did handle with the communications. And now I am working part-time, like a freelance part-time as a credit analyst at Refill as well. So some of the things I wanted to share, I know, Sharon, you just asked that if there's any surprises in my journey for this internship at Refill. For sure. First, I didn't know I was going to get into mortgage. I was, to be completely honest, looking for some sort of finance role, but then I found the mortgage side and the real estate side very intriguing because as a business student, as a like typical business student, I love sales. I love you know, sales, commissions, where there's a lot of freedom for you to act upon. So I was definitely very much into the mortgage side, something that I had no idea or no knowledge about before I started this internship. And being a mortgage agent is definitely not my initial goal when I, you know, stepped into that office, but now I see that as like one of my greatest accomplishments. So for sure, there are a lot of surprises. I think this internship spiraled into, you know, like a very valuable opportunity that I basically did not see coming. And I feel very privileged to have this opportunity. And what I want to share, kind of 3 things that I want to share about this internship and some things that I learned from this internship. First one is that opportunities always grow into more opportunities as long as you're open to those possibilities. I think if I were more closed off to that 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. office day where I did what I was asked to do to, you know, the administrative side of things, I wouldn't have that opportunity to grow into, you know, a licensed mortgage agent or possibly, you know, continue in this company as a part-time credit analyst. And it always grows into something more. But you just need to be open to it. You can't, if you only stick to what you're asked to do in the first place, it is relatively hard for you to learn more than you expected to. So I think for incoming university students, maybe high school students also, it's very important to have that open mindset and to accept challenges, to accept those incoming opportunities, and to kind of just juggle between that to see where that takes you. And on the topic of opportunities growing and spiraling, my internship at Refill, I did not expect this to happen. And it turns out to be something that I learned so much from, was that I started to help with and direct and finally do interviews with a lot of the industry professionals in different industries, and like hearing a lot of their stories was definitely like one of the most valuable part of my internship, because you get to, you know, listen to people's stories and learn from real people whom of which you could keep in touch with for any sort of mentorship. So I think those were all great opportunities that stemmed from one opportunity. And the key is to be open and just never say no to opportunities too soon, because you think that's not something you expected to do in the first place. Sometimes that just grow into something so much better than what you expected to have achieved. Okay. And then lastly, as for my internship experience, I would say I actually don't have too clear of an objective when going into a task. I know it's great to plan, as our previous speakers mentioned. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely a great idea to plan something. Don't jump into an opportunity without knowing what you're getting yourself into, for sure. But a lot of the times for fresh business students, for me as well at the beginning of first year, usually your goals are very, very clear. You want to get into a venture capital firm first year, private equity firm second year, even better, one of the big banks second year, or one of the big fours in their, more back office departments. Third year, people recruit for Evercore or other boutique investment banking firms. Fourth year, they recruit for Goldman Sachs and go to New York, Wall Street. That's a very, very, very clear path for a lot of business students to go down into. And it's very, very stressful in this current economic environment to be getting into those roles. I know a lot of people who push so hard for it, and it is a lot of stress on them. One of my friends who's very big into finance, I have not seen him since the start of school. He's been in his room studying for stock pitches and case competitions, which is definitely very stressful on him. So what I want to say is more of an idea of not having too clear of a goal when you go into something. Don't go into something for the purpose of having that resume filler or be like, this is my stepping stone into another opportunity in 1 year. I think that does restrict you from, seeking the full potential of yourself and getting the most out of your opportunity. So that's just something I also wanted to share.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anila. Because of time, we will end the presentation or sharing for now, but leaving the opportunity at the end if audiences have any further questions about your journey. But I think you've done a great job preparing for all these wonderful tips, and you have given, I think, any high school audiences in the crowd a very good starting point. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now we will welcome our last but not least speaker of tonight, Shannon Wang. So Shannon, unlike our earlier panelist, he's in high tech, but he has an official title being the software engineer. So he is a software engineer at Qualcomm, the chip company, and also he is a founder of Dual Vector startup company. He graduated from University of Toronto with a CEC degree and then UIUC with a computer science degree. So he is leading internal LLM deployment and CV patent development at Qualcomm Automotive Camera team. So let's welcome Shannon to the podium. So Shannon, the first question I want to ask you is when I read your bio and introducing you, I had a little bit of hard time realizing that my tech terminology is limited because I actually do not fully understand what's your job title, leading internal LLM deployment and the CV patent development really means. So do you want to start by sharing with us what exactly your job is about, your title?
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Thank you. Actually, I prepared a presentation that would include the answer to this question. So I would like to start my presentation. The panelists of tonight are amazing. I really love them. Yeah, and I think we definitely have many intersections in terms of our ideas. So I think it's my privilege to be the last speaker because I actually have some high-level conclusions and that actually I feel like it could serve as a summary for these speakers, which I feel really privileged. So the title of my today's presentation is Path of Self-Discovery, From Divergence to Convergence. So before diving into that topic, I would like to first talk about myself, answer the question that Sharon just brought up. First of all, I just graduated from U of T, computer engineering, last year, 2022, with a business minor. This is important why I'm talking about this, which I will talk later. And I'm currently pursuing a computer science master's degree at UIUC remotely. and it's sponsored by our company, which is nice. Allow me to working full time as a software engineer, and also have the opportunity to study at the same time. And at Qualcomm, I work at automotive software team. For most of you guys, probably never heard of Qualcomm because Qualcomm is a company that manufacture and design chips that for the people. And most of our customers are companies. So on the consumer side, people might not heard of it. But if you ever own a software, the cell phone, you will have our chips inside. So it basically, if you have a cell phone, especially not Apple, that will most likely our CPUs and stuff. Yeah, but I'm not working at the software on the cell phone side. I'm actually working in the automotive, which is a growing sector. We actually design chips for the entire automotive IVI system, which stands for Intelligent Vehicle Infotainment, and also ADAS, Advanced Driving Assist Systems, and AD, which is autonomous driving. So that's basically what our team do. I'm in the automotive camera team. So basically, we develop camera drivers and camera softwares. LLM actually stands for large language models, so which are the ChatGPT and the Alex startup GPT-0. That's everything is about LLM. And actually, I'm looking into we are as a company, we're looking into the internal LLM use cases. So that's all the things people are talking about. Now the AI are replacing us, right? And actually, I'm leading the process, but well, actually not replacing people, but to speed up our workflows. For example, we will have the LLMs to help up speed up our designs, look into our code, provide code reviews, and even write unit tests, provide knowledge base, stuff like that. But the actually interesting thing is different from school or actually academia. To actually use LLM in workforce is actually quite difficult because due to context lens, we have our code base in millions of lines of code, which is hard to feed all that into the language model and help it and let it to generate content for us. On the other side, I'm also responsible for computer vision pattern development as we are a camera team. So we also develop camera software, camera algorithms, and computer vision projects. So that's most on the technical side. But actually, I'm also running a startup, which is Dual Vector. It is quite different from what my job is. It's nothing in the tech sector. It's in the education sector. As all the panelists discussed before, mentorship is extremely important, and that's why I decided to have startup called Dual Vector. And it is actually the first Canadian high dimension strategy research institute focused on solving common problems and empowering individuals. Basically, during undergrad studies, I observe people have common issues. They don't know how to choose their career path, and they need mentor, of course. But differently from what the industry is doing right now is like you seek for mentors. What we did is that we actually gather the common problems and we do research and we come up with systematic courses. So that's the most different part. But before diving into that, I would like to talk about why I actually, what motivated me to have this startup, because some of my own stories. So actually, I'm not only a software engineer. I would consider myself more like an artist. I actually composed and released 9 original piano pieces in my first year. Well, that's a long time ago in 2018. And I was also a course instructor. I started lecturing students at second year for our 2 courses, which is of APS 110 and ECE 110. They're just first year fundamental courses. But at that point of time, I already know that I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to dive into education because I feel like that's my vocation. That's what I'm going to do. And moving forward, I also represent University of Toronto, participating in an exchange research program at HRS, which is High Performance Computing Center Stuttgart, which is the one of the 3 high performance computing center in Germany. And I was working on some industrial VR projects. As you can see in the photo, it is actually a snapshot of our lab. It's running VR simulations. We ran simulations for top automotive companies like Porsche, BMW, Benz, and stuff like that. Yeah. And I'm also a MC. I hosted 2019 and 2020 Toronto Spring Gala, and I was honored to have the opportunity to work with top celebrities in China. Name a few like Da Shan, Yuan Yawei, Man Shuke, Wang Sulong. And I'm also a rapper. I released 14 albums since 2019 at NetEase. So if you have your NetEase music open, you can feel free to add me. It's just my name, Sheldon. I'm also the youngest member of International Brotherhood of Magicians since 2014. I'm actually a professional magician. So the question comes, oh, well, that's not it. During my undergrad, I was also the co-president and the VP external at ACE, which is the Association of Chinese Engineers. And I was reported by Canadian immigrant for my cross-field talents, including all above. So the reason I'm talking all this is actually, I would like to bring up this point. It's actually Confucius said, which means that one is not just an instrument, because instrument is designed for one specific use. So if you have a glass bottle, you have a cup, it is meant for you to drink water, right? But we as human, we are not an instrument. So you can definitely do everything you set your mind to. It's even impressed myself that I can achieve so many things in so many different fields. It's just if you have the will to try it out. But there's things that I didn't talk about during my glorious undergrad study. Actually, at second year of study, I experienced extremely a hard time, and I was even suffering mental health illness. And I remember my poorest grade during my undergrad. That's I only get 57 in one course. So I've been through hard times, and I was confused. I was lost, and there was no one there to guide me through. So that's why I came up with dual vector, which I systematically investigate how to solve these problems, because I believe people feeling lost, not sure what to do, it's pretty common. Whether you should go into a different major, you should keep your current major, or go to a startup or a big firm. These are all choices, right? So, but we need systematic ways to determine them instead of of course, talking to senior friends or guys like me will definitely help, but I prefer systematic and scientific. So that's why I come up with this dual vector. So we are actually a strategy research institute. And that's why I was talking about the business minor, which was significantly impactful for my startup, actually, because I still remember the course that enlightened me, which is called Markets and Competitive Strategy, which talk about corporate strategies. But during the studies, I was so enlightened, and I reckon all the strategies in corporations can be used in life, but none of my classmates have that of enlightenment. So I was watching around, and no one was like me. They were just so focused on the course content. So I feel kind of sad. Then I have this dual vector. Then dual vector, we have 2 labs right now. One lab is called Dimensionality Reduction Lab. Sounds really cool, but which dimensionality we're reducing? We're actually reducing the dimensionality of the problems, because we believe problems have common solutions. As I said, you're lost, you're confused. So that's why there's the first product we have, which is a systematically building sustainable competitive advantage course, and which I would actually part of the content of today's presentation are taken from that course. And we also have lifelong learning workshop that we have different panel topics for students each time. As I said, we believe convergence in the essence of the problem. So that's the purpose of Dimensionality Reduction Lab. On the other side, we have Dimensionality Augmentation Lab, which are responsible for individual empowerments, because we believe divergence in individual needs, even though the problems are similar, but the status of each student and their strengths are different. So in this lab, we have a project called long-term tracking project. We will mentor students at their very first, from the first year and going through their academic career and their career from first year, providing feedbacks for them. And I would like to introduce the 5 pillars of our research, which I mentioned before, that we don't want, casual decisions or just based on one personal experience. We want systematic approach of solving these problems. And if you know the education sector in Toronto, most of the firms actually focusing on short term instead of long term. Like there are institutes that that mentor you to give you a higher GPA. There's someone will help you to apply for grad schools, but that's not what I'm aiming for. So the 5 pillars, first of them is of course the MBA curriculum, which is quite useful, that will teach students how to present themselves given the same content. And also the business competition framework, as I said, business competition framework and business competition strategy can be migrated to personal planning completely, and cognition psychology theory, complex system research, and project management approach. So basically, I combine all these 5 pillars together and make up that course. Yeah, so I'm actually sharing some of my findings now. It's so some suggestion for use. So talking back to my topic, from divergence to convergence. What is diverge? What is converge? So in mathematics, diverging, as you can see, you're basically just approaching infinity. That's diverging. And converging, which means that you will converge to a certain value and not move. In this case, you're converging to about like 1.5 and not moving. So my suggestion for university students would be from divergence to convergence, which means that you have to explore all the aspects first, then converge to a certain topic. I did. I diverged myself to all this type of field. I was, doing music, doing MCs, doing magic, doing all type of stuff by running student organizations. It's the part of diverging, because without diverging, you will never know what you truly love or the boundary of your radius. So here comes the principle of radius. So I come up with 3 radius. The outermost radius is the cognitive radius, and the middle radius is the competence radius, and the center one is the action radius. So what we should do is to expand the cognitive radius and determine the competence radius and decrease the action radius. So that's the whole topic of from divergence to convergence. So if you diverge first, that will expand your cognitive radius. You know what you love, you will gain more knowledge. And then during the 4-year study or 5-year studies, you will know about yourself. So that will be determining the competence radius. Oh, I'm good at coding, or I'm not good at coding. I'm a more business person, or I'm not, right? And the most importantly is to decrease the action radius. So essentially, you're going to focus on something, right? You will only you can only do a handful of stuff. Even myself now, I just have my full-time job and my startup, and I don't really do all the other stuff in university. Why? Because you have to decrease your action radius to be really focused. So diverge for openness, converge for focus. Yeah. So travel back in time, I would give myself a couple of advice. So I would like to share that with the audience. So first, and I think that's the most important one, especially I believe most of our audience there is still university students. So I would like you to know that study is the mean, not an end. This is extremely important. I believe if anyone can differentiate what is the mean and the end, then you are a wise man. That's from my perspective. So I actually have a case here of a blindly follows social conformity. There's a social experiment that there's a elevator and the door opens and everyone in the elevator, they're actually facing backwards, which looks really weird and creepy. And they conduct experiment on the reaction of the people coming into the elevator. And it turns out that 80% of them, they will do the same, which for no reason. So that's actually a snapshot of our current student body. People blindly follows. If he is doing a master, probably I should do the same. If he's going to the big firms, I should do the same. He's doing software, I should do the same. Which is definitely not true. So right here, I actually have a real question here from project management exam, PMP exam, because I'm actually studying PMP exams. I said that project management approach is one of our pillars. So to be lecture the student better, of course, I need to totally understand project management. And I found a really, really good question that illustrates this point of mean and end. Okay, I'm just gonna go through the question really quick. So basically, you are a project manager. You have to select from the available candidates. The first one, always work overtime. Second one, works very hard. Third one, meets the project requirements. Fourth one is very enthusiastic about the project and will work overtime if necessary. So who will be the most appropriate resource, right? I believe for the most students, they might think maybe the fourth one, right? Because he is enthusiastic about the project, and he's hardworking. He will work overtime, but that is actually not correct. The correct answer is actually the third one, because the third one meets the project requirement. Meeting the project requirements is the end goal. So that's the end. And working hard and working overtime are means. So many people were confused about that. So it is actually a very, very good example not to confuse about means and end. So that's the same thing in the university. So what we study is actually a mean to an end. It's not like you have to get this degree. It just, you might need this degree for a better job. You might need this degree for a successful career, right? But if you have a successful career or a startup, you don't have to have this degree. That's why many successful entrepreneurs, they drop out, because they understand that study is the mean, not the end, and they're ready they know what they want, they know their end goal, and that's why they're aiming for it. So I think that's a very, very important license for especially for the young, for the youth. Yeah, and the end goal actually this is the part that almost exactly same as what Alex shared about finding the ikigai. It's just more structured way. It's ikigai is actually a Japanese term. It stands for the reason for being. So the end goal, what we're aiming, is to find the intersection of these four circles. The first one is what you love. The second one is what the world needs. The third one is what you can pay for. And the fourth one are what you're good at. So if you can combine all these four together, that will be ikigai. And that's why I'm doing this education business. Because this is what I love, this is what I'm good at, and this is what work needs, and I can get paid for it. So I suggest all younger generations, when the student body, to explore themselves, diverge. You need to diverge to find your ikigai. You might have a job, but a job is different from a career. You need to have you need to build your own career based on your ikigai. Because if you have your ikigai and you really love it, you will have the execution that no one can match you, because you really love it. And this is the territory only belongs to yourself. And that's actually the purpose of our dual vector. We help students to find their ikigai instead of competing in the battleground that you are not suited for. For example, you're not good at coding, but you believe that everyone else is doing software engineer, so you just crushing lead code crashes every day, and you're burning out. You even have mental health problems, and there's totally no point for that. You need to find your sweet spot. And there's actually another insight from this diagram. You can see that there isn't an intersection that you are good at and the world needs, but you don't even love it and you cannot get paid for. And there isn't something that you love and you can get paid for, you are not good at and the world needs. So essentially what I'm saying is that you can start with 3 of the 4s. You don't have to have the perfect ikigai that have all the 4 components. You can start with 3, and especially what you love and what you're good at. So the second point, travel back in time, I would tell myself, finish tasks when they're important but not urgent. There's a very famous priority matrix here. The first, of course, the urgent and important. Second, urgent but not important. Third, that will be important but not urgent. And last but not least, the not important, not urgent. But that's only the level 1 of understanding this. So what are the difference between normal people and pros? Like, normal people will spend most of the time working on urgent and important stuff, so which is the priority number 1. But actually the pros, they spend most of their time working on important but not urgent tasks. task. Why? Because if you solve the task when it's important but not urgent, you will not have a lot of urgent and important tasks. You get that, right? So we need to solve them when they're important but not urgent. Another takeaway for this managed priority thing is I really want to talk about is I call this priority bits. From my observation of my successful students and my fellow classmates, the successful ones, they actually just hammer one technique, is managed priorities. As you can see, they don't need to succeed in all the aspects. So what I'm showing here is actually in the binary term 1 0 0 0. You can think of 1 is success, 0 is failure. So they in order to succeed, they don't need to have all the priority bits turned to 1. They only need to turn the highest priority bits to 1. So in binary, 1 0 0 0 is 8 and 0 1 1 1 is 7. So even you got all the lower priority correct and you missed the highest priority, the return is of course not optimum. So I would like to address that. Always find the highest priority task in your life and tackle them first. And travel back in time, I would tell myself, treat failures as ladders from local optimum to global optimum. So in computer science, there's a group of problems called optimization problems that basically a black box. You don't understand what's going on inside, but you need to optimize the result from it. And there's one very famous algorithm called greedy algorithm, which means that you take the best move from your current outlook. It's actually most of our parents are thinking, right? Our parents will send us to the best primary school so that we go to the best middle school, so that we go to the best high school, go to the best university, and have landed the best job. So that's a greedy algorithm. And actually in computer science, greedy algorithm is actually good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's actually, but it will reach a local optima on a scale of 100%. Usually greedy algorithm will rank about 70%. So which is it's actually a good algorithm. But in order to reach the global optimum, as I share in this graph, you need to introduce randomness. So if you can treat all the failures in your life at the ladder, climbing from the local optima to global optima, so that you are approaching to your own success. So that's what I wanted to share. Even you are not on your fastest track, everything is not playing out as what you planned, it's totally fine. Last but not least, I would like to tell myself, focus on system, not the result. Focus on long-term system, not the current status. So I actually have a example here to illustrate the system. So think about coin tosses. Let's guess which coin is going to win. So the first coin, I'm going to demonstrate the first 3 tries. So as we can see, the first coin, it's two tails and 1 head, and the second coin is 3 heads. So from current status, we might think second coin has a higher probability of winning, right? But if we unfold all of them, we actually observe that first coin is winning. Why that's the case? Because I made a PowerPoint, I made it win, of course. But have you ever think about that? We cannot control the individual result of flipping the coin, but we can control what type of coin we are. So if you are a coin that have a 70% of chance giving a head, so that will make you a better coin for this game to win, right? So what I'm trying to say is that we cannot control individual results. As in job search, university application, where everything around us, there are many randomness involved in the system. So you might be feeling for your one objectives or goals. But what we should focus on is to improve the system, to make yourself a better coin. That's the point. So that's talk about the most important part of the MBA course that I learned is actually the difference between competitive advantage and sustainable competitive advantage. So competitive advantage refers to if I on the exam I got 90%, but you got 100%, then you have a competitive advantage. But sustainable competitive advantage is that I keep getting better results. And why and how to transform your competitive advantage to sustainable competitive advantage, you have to have systems thinking and build yourself as a system, iterate yourself as a system. And that's the point of my course. So the whole point of my course is teaching people how to iterate yourself as a system to have better strategy, better execution, better evaluation, and iteration. So at the very last, I would like to share 4 principles for complex system to end my presentation. So as we all know, we're actually living in chaos. And why is that? Because chaos system actually have 3 characteristics. First of all, is internal randomness. Is that we observe randomness, but actually there's the internal logic within the system. And the second characteristic is fractal. Fractal, which means that think about snowflakes. It will repeat itself on the smaller dimension. And the third characteristic is sensitive to input. So everyone must heard about the butterfly effect, right? Like the butterfly wings is yeah, you know, and it will cause the weather change in US. And why that's the case? Because we're in chaos. But living in chaos, how can we handle this? So I conclude 4 principles that I can share. The first one is system over individual. So here's the example here. It is actually one of the most famous algorithm called ant colony algorithm, which simulates the ant. Because think about ant, they don't have any intelligence. Each of them, they only know to carry food. But there are so many of ants, and they can come up with the shortest path to the food source. And why that is the case? Because they will talk to each other using their biology, and they will iterate their path, basically. So you need to construct a system instead of working as an individual. And transforming that to individual, we need to connect ourselves from past to present. So that will simulate all the ants. So if the past and the present and the future of yourself are disconnected, then there isn't a system. And the second is to construct feedback loops and iterate. So the ant, they have a feedback loop and then iterate. They will constantly iterate their path, and then they will find a better path. And last but not least is execution. You have to work. You cannot just think. You have to work in order to achieve the shortest path. And the second principle is campus over map, because there's no plan doesn't change. Planning are essential, but plans are not important. Plans are not important, but planning is essential. Yeah. So in a simple system, map is better. For example, you're walking on a street, of course you want to have a map. But in a complex system, which is what we are actually living in, compass is actually better. Think about a foggy forest. In a foggy forest, do you prefer a map or a compass? So you need to set correct direction for yourself. You don't have to have every single step paved, but you have to have a clear direction. The third one is practice over theory. And in project management, there are actually two famous approach. One is called agile approach, and the other is waterfall. So agile is actually the most famous one, especially in software industry and the digital world right now, because it actually suggests that done is better than perfect, which is the quote written on the Facebook whiteboard. Done is better than perfect, because it suggests that you should only achieve MVP, minimum viable product first, and to keep iterate your product. The whole point is to finish the entire closed loop. And on the other side, the traditional waterfall way, which was used probably 30, 40 years ago, because there, you are having a large manufacturing plant. You need to get detailed requirements, design, implementation, step by step, because if you miss one step or you have missed one calculation, the cost is significant, because you have to purchase the land, you have to get equipment. It's very costly. So, but the time changes. Now it's all digital world. Everything is fast, and there's literally no drawbacks if you have an imperfect product. So that's what agile approach is actually much better, and I think it's adopted in most of the industry right now in project management. And last, that's the toughness over power. So what are the difference, right? Think about the after a thunderstorm, the trees will break down, right? So because of the wind. but the grass won't, because toughness is overpowered. You should construct yourself not to, you shouldn't aim for not getting hurt by the failures. You should aiming on recovering fast. So that's the idea. So that will conclude the frame principles I would like to share. And I would like to thank you. Thank you everyone for this opportunity.
Thank you, Shanlan. Yes, so you have answered all my questions so beautifully, the ones that I shared with you. So I'm very impressed with the wealth of experiences that you've had, and you're wearing so many different hats and having all sorts of talents in different areas, cross sectors, and being an instructor, educator, and also doing your high-tech job as software engineer, and also music talents and a magician. Oh my God, I cannot imagine. And you are absolutely right that you are treating this learning as a mean, not the end. You're having fun. And I'm sorry to hear that you had some stress, emotional meltdown, or mental challenges at some point of your life, which is also valuable for our listeners to see that it's hopeful. Even when you had those harsh times, you bounce back and you thrive and you become even better you. So thank you very much. And now let me invite every other panelist and speakers back to the podium. We are getting to the end of our presentation, and I'm truly inspired myself by all of you. What a wealth of experiences and stories and the wonderful sharing. And as someone who has been in education sector for many years, and even at the stage of my own life where I probably were not seeking any career advice, I still feel I've learned so much tonight through all of your sharings. You have different stories to tell, but there's something in common in all your stories. I think your success, no matter at which level, has something in common. And we see that there's different ways lead to Rome, but your success are all sort of in a similar way determined by your open-mindedness, your determination, your perseverance, your hardworking, your proactiveness, your persistence, and you have a plan. And a lot of time you do have a plan, but you're willing to make changes and adapt to changes whenever needed. So thank you very much. And then let's give our speakers a round of applause. And thank you for your generous sharing. And now we have a bit of time left at the end, and we do have a few questions from our audiences here. So we'll just quickly go by those questions. If you still wanted to ask questions of our speakers, this is your last call and opportunity to put your question in the chat room. So the first question, I think it's for Wei. Wei, your language ability is amazing. Your English is so fluent, even though you keep emphasizing you're not the second generation of immigrants. You lived in many different countries and you speak several languages, like including Mandarin, Cantonese, and possibly learning French. I won't be surprised if one day you tell me you are learning French, and your English is so beautiful. So what's a tip here? What's the trick? And do you find when you gained competency or fluency in a second language, your first language fluency is compromised? If so, how do you deal with that? Or you're just talented?
Oh, well, thank you. I was just browsing the questions, and I don't know if the first one and the second one are all for me, but anyways, thank you. I think it's Ming who raised this question. I wonder if you're still online, but I like this question, but I'm just wondering like how you arrive at the conclusion that learning, a second language would necessarily compromise the first one, and if you're referring to the first one as being like my mother tongue, like Chinese. I was thinking it's not, at least not in my case, because, for example, when I was training as an interpreter, I realized that I really need to, further improve my Chinese in order to give a smooth delivery, more idiomatic, rather than, giving a, let's say, a literal rendition of the original speech to make more sense to the audience. So back then, like I read a lot more like classical literature, like And also I did a lot of deliberate training, and I picked up a lot of let's say 成语 from the language. So I would say compared with maybe 1 or 2 years ago, my Chinese actually improved. And this improvement is largely thanks to the need to command, have a better command of English. And it seems applies to like learning other languages. Sharon, you're right. I'm already I speak some French already. So when I was learning French, I realized that it also in turn helped me with my English, because you know some of the very basic French words are actually quite advanced in English. And also when I was learning Cantonese, I found the different tones to be hard to master, because there were 9 tones in Cantonese, some of which simply they don't exist in Mandarin. So that helps me in turn to have a better comprehend of why learning Chinese is difficult for some aspects, because these tones, even if the 4 or 5 tones that in Mandarin doesn't exist in French or English. So in short, I would say they are mutually like reinforcing. They are complementary to each other. I don't see the necessity like necessarily compromising one or another. So if anything that you find your either first language or second language is, let's say, deteriorating, I guess it's more perhaps because you lack, consistent or systematic input and output using that language for that language. And I would say one common culprit that I see it is the constant exposure to like internet. You are like more or less used to this fragmented use of language. So I guess I hope it helps answer the question that you have.
Yes, thank you very much. So the second question I wanted to put in front of the panelists, and I think it's more for Alex. I know this is going to be a hard question for any startup companies, is when and what do you decide to patent, to stop other competitors from copying your ideas and from stealing your ideas in a way. And I think that is a very difficult decision to make for many startup companies. But I don't know, because in your bio, you already have 3 patents. And I wonder, how did you manage this matter in your experience?
Yes, absolutely. So I can talk a little bit about those original 3 patents. So the way it kind of works in a lot of industry research labs is that if you submit a conference paper, like a paper to a journal or a conference, which is common machine learning, then the company will basically pay patent lawyers to write up your paper as a patent. And since you already published the idea anyways, it doesn't really matter that the patent also makes your idea public, right? And so part of having patents is also like knowing, one, you can like legally enforce it somehow, or 2, that giving away the tech, if you can't enforce it, that it's it's not that important to give away this IP. I guess for us, so that definitely made sense at these like bigger industry research labs. Kind of what we're doing at GPT-0, I haven't fully decided whether to patent it yet, in part because we might prefer for it to stay a trade secret and basically just maintain like somewhat secrecy over what we do versus patenting it. I think, yeah, in general, though, I think patenting is a good idea. A lot of the worth of a company like BlackBerry right now is in those patents that it still has.
Thank you. Yeah, that's getting quite technical. There's trademarks, there's trade secrets, there's patents, there's copyright. How to best protect our intellectual property? That is $1 million question for many businesses. Startups or existing or very mature companies all facing that challenge all the time. So thank you, Alex. One last question. I think there's one question, Javin, that's more personal if you wanted to check out and answer in the chat. The one last question, I want to put the question to Shalon. So Shalon, I remember you mentioning about your experience as an MC, and you are also an instructor, part-time instructor, and you're very technical in your full-time job. So how did you manage to build up or develop all these amazing skills, including your MC or public speaking skills? Well, are there any tips? Like, did you gain all this? And even in your presentation, where you touched on some very technical issues, theories, principles regarding education and the career planning or personal potentials, etc. There's a lot of learning happening already from your side, and which is, I don't think you took any courses in
Yes.
universities. Yes. So I wanted to ask you, how did you build up those skills?
Yes, I like to point out something. Actually, I believe expertise cannot be taught, but can be learned. So that's very important. That because if someone just teach you something, that it's not guaranteed you will get the skills. But if you want to learn something, it comes from yourself. So that's why I keep talking about diverging, because diverging, it's exploring your boundaries of interest and your corners, basically. You never know, you could do something else, right? If you never try, you will never know. So I encourage everyone to try out things, and that's what I did in my confused times, because I'm confused internally. I'm not sure what to do, but as an individual, what I can do is to put into actions in all the ideas I have. And I think that's the one thing I'm really grateful. Even I don't have anything thought through back in times, not like now, but I'm really grateful that I put in the efforts. I have an idea, I always work on it. That's actually what I observed from the industry. Actually, I work with so many talented engineers in my company. They have so many amazing ideas, but they don't put in actions because for very complicated reasons. Probably they prefer work-life balance. It doesn't matter. Like my point is, you have to put into actions. The ideas is of course important, and if you like it, you'll put into action. So that's what I did. I find myself passionate about so many things, and I never limit myself. I never say, oh, you're an engineer, you shouldn't be doing this, or you are an artist, you shouldn't be doing that. As I said, 君子不器. You shouldn't set boundary to yourself. And there is also a story I like to share. Is actually about learned helplessness. It's actually another pillar I share. It's about cognitive psychology. What is learned helplessness? Basically, if you go to Thailand, you will see so many elephants. They're actually be tied with a very short rope on a staff. That short rope and staff cannot control the elephant. Elephant is a couple tons, right? It's definitely not controlling it. But why people can control the elephant using the staff and the rope? It's only because when they're really young age at the elephant, they tied it with the staff and the rope, and the elephant trying to escape, and it cannot, and it won't escape for the rest of its life.
Perfect.
Think about this. This is actually what is happening in our life. So we should never set boundary to ourselves. Think about the learned helplessness. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a really interesting angle to look at this. Okay, so due to the time, I know we have gone more than 2 hours, and it's a long time, but I felt so excited from where I am. It's already almost 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm in a different time zone, but I'm getting very excited. And I know from all your sharing, you have so many different roles at wherever you are right now, and your schedule is very busy. Everybody's very energetic, yet you spare your time on a Saturday evening and sharing generously of your own path to success, hoping to help others to achieve where they wanted to be, to reach where they wanted to be. So on behalf of the community, I sincerely thank every single one of you for helping and for sharing, and we wanted to congratulate you on your success achieved so far. And we look forward to hearing even more exciting achievements coming your way. Okay, so thank you, everybody. That concludes our forum today. And at the end of the event, I'd like to also thank all the organizers, the volunteers who have helped to make this real plan and to have the opportunity to host today's session. I'm very honored to be the moderator, and also thanking everyone for participating in front of the screen, staying so late in the evening. So now I'd like to invite just a couple of community leaders who are in the audience as well, staying with us for the whole evening, to quickly give us some comments. Nelson Liu, who is the Vice President for and also Secretary for CCAA, the organization that's a co-sponsor of today's forum, to give us a few reflection or summary or conclusion. So Nelson, are you still there?
Sure. Yes, I'm still here.
Hi.
Yeah. Good evening, guests and bright young minds and brilliant speakers. So my name is Nelson, and my job is senior cybersecurity specialist with RBC, and also I'm the vice president of CCAA, Confederation of Chinese Alumni Association. So it's my pleasure to be here today to attend this, the Youth Career Development Forum. This is a great session, a great event that we spent like 2 hours almost, and I didn't feel that long, because everyone shares great experiences, great knowledge about what you have done and what you have achieved. So it is really amazing for each one of you. We are here today because we believe in the future. So a future that is reshaped by the capable hands of the young talent, specializing in the AI and the bright minds. So in AI, I can share some of my experience. Like in my work, I deal with AI also, nowadays, and I'm using the AI models to detect the unauthorized access to the system, the network, to be somehow the malicious behaviors. And recently we deployed the generative AI for LLM. I heard that who mentioned that one of the speaker, I think is Shellen, probably he mentioned about the LLM. So we are deploying the ChatGPT in the bank to protect the data leakage. So all those are amazing stuff that we are using the technology. So I know that each speaker tonight has shown us with the passion, with the perseverance, and with the innovation. I think together, so like you and the young talents and every one of us can change the world. And let's give the young speakers today another round of applause for their remarkable contributions and inspiring story. So another applause.
Thank you very much, Nelson. Yes,
thank you.
Thank you for the support of the event. And Mr. Ye Jun, who is chair of the foundation board of CCAA, was here earlier, but unfortunately he had to leave just right before this part, and so he sent his regrets. Otherwise, he would like to congratulate all our speakers. And next, I'd like to invite Ms. Wang Hui as the representative from the employer side, or the also a community leader herself. She's a leading financial professional in the Toronto area. So Ms. Wang Hui, are you there? Do you want to say a few words for our audience and congratulate our speakers?
Sam, 小明，你把王慧的set a co-host. I lost her.
已经是了。
Okay, yeah. Wait, can you speak? Can you see? Okay, look like we haven't get ready yet. Okay, let's go move on to the next one.
Okay, then she might join later. I don't know. Okay, then Finally, we wanted to say to everybody, if you enjoyed and learned a lot from our forums so far, this is, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is our second in the series. So if
all our speakers a great speech, I believe all of us will benefit of our future. The next one we'll be showing here, it's already on the screen. You'll see later October 17. Oh, so forget about 16. Yeah, delete the 16. So 17, we already invite 5 amazing speakers as well to come in to give us the story sharing and the experience share. So they are a few guys on either on entrepreneur or on academic. Okay, well, first one will be Brandon Lee. He's a co-CEO and co-founder for Power. So he also is a Focus 30 under 30 graduate from UT, and Jerry is amazing history as well. He graduated from Waterloo computer science, and later he founded a company called Sodaton, and a music kind of platform, and then sold it. And now he's financial freedom, and he's running his own business, restaurant business. Okay, Wendy is also amazing ladies, students from UT. She has lots of experience on not only on the academic side, but also co-op side, as well as the social event organizer. So you will see her very amazing story sharing. William Wang also is the software engineer at several self-driving company or vehicle companies, so like Uber, Wabis, and then currently at Meta. So you will have a lot of IT related. And the last one, and not the least, is Peter Wang. He's a software engineer before at IBM, Amazon, and currently is Oracle. So you will see a lot of amazing story sharing during the next sections. And I wish to see you again on October 17th. And thank you. Take this opportunity. Thank you for all our speakers tonight, as well as our moderator, Shannon Girardi from Paris, without sleeping the whole night, organized this, host this event. Really appreciate. And our volunteers and organizers, volunteers here. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a wonderful
evening. And you
evening.
can scan this code, 2D barcode, in order to get to your group if nothing still not in there.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for your MC tonight. It's from Paris.
My pleasure.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.